So the Democrats control the White House, they control the House of Representatives, and they control the United States Senate. They don't really have to worry about Republicans for any sort of reconciliation issue because they can get reconciliation passed without Republican votes. Reconciliation under the rules of the United States Senate bypasses the filibuster. Let me explain this one to you. This is part of what's called the Byrd Rule. When Robert Byrd, the KKK Democrat, was in the U.S. Senate, he decided he was able to get a rule passed that once a year, now the Senate parliamentarian says possibly twice a year, if you have a budget resolution, that you can pass something to reconcile appropriation items with the budget. The key is they have a positive impact on the budget and they do not change fundamentally public policy. So, for example, the Democrats wanted to throw amnesty into reconciliation, and the Senate parliamentarians said that would fundamentally change public policy. Therefore, you can't do it. They want to raise some taxes. They want to raise the corporate tax. They want to raise the individual income tax. They want to cut some spending. They want to spend a lot. They're claiming they have pay-fors. That is, their projections claim that things will be paid for, even though they won't. Joe Manchin from West Virginia has said, wait a second, we've already spent several trillion on COVID. We've got a $1.5 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, and now they want to spend $3.5 trillion on a grab bag of goodies. No way. No more than $1.5 trillion. One of the ways that they were going to pay for their spending to get it through reconciliation was a prescription drug benefit alteration. They were going to essentially raise some costs on people, and Democrats in the House, some of them have balked at that. Moderates have said, no way, I'm not voting for this. You can only lose 3 Democrats in the House. So now Christian Sinema, the senator from Arizona, has gone to Joe Biden and said, Joe, I'm going to vote for your reconciliation package, but only if you first pass by September 27th the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Joe Biden says, well, that's not on me, that's on Nancy Pelosi. So Sinema has echoed it. And House moderates have said, if you don't pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill by September 27th, the big package dies. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has come out and said, if you do pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we're killing it. So you've got the circular firing squad now among the Democrats, the moderates saying, pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill or else we won't vote for the other when it comes up. And the progressives saying, we will not pass the one without the other. And all the while, Joe Manchin is saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to vote for a $3.5 trillion plan. It's dead. It cannot pass the Senate without Joe Manchin's vote. So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Well, they've decided they're going to try to raise the debt ceiling. See, here's part of the problem. They have to raise the debt ceiling because based on the projected spending in the Democrats' plan, it's going to escalate. It's going to go through the roof. This is a real problem for the Democrats here. They cannot, fundamentally, the Democrats cannot pass their massive spending bill without having raised the debt ceiling because they can't spend the money. They'll hit the debt ceiling. The Congress says we only will allow this much debt of the federal government. I think it's like $29-30 trillion. Yes, trillion with a T-R, trillion dollars. And when the Democrats pass the budget, they're going to blow through it. So they got to raise the ceiling. And Manchin's saying, I'm only going to allow $1.5 trillion in the package. And Republicans are saying, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling. You're going to have to do it through the reconciliation process. Why? The Republican logic here is that if you wish to raise the debt ceiling, you have to do it yourself because you're raising it to capture your spending. And it's not going well for them, for the Democrats. I want to read for you from Punchbowl News. A lot of the people who wrote the political playbook, the good writers, they left and they started this Punchbowl News. I got to read for you part of this because it really sets the stage for what's going on Capitol Hill. The only assessment one can make right now about Democrats on Capitol Hill and the White House, this is a party that at the moment is a bit adrift and doesn't seem to know how to turn its bold ideas into legislation that can actually pass. This is a big problem when you've got the razor-thin margins that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have. Forget blowing up the filibuster. There are few issues that a simple majority of House and Senate Democrats agree on right now. Even more worrisome is caught up in the struggle between the Democrats is government funding and the debt limit. We're careening into a legislative crisis. The government's going to shut down in 9 days, and estimates indicate we're going to reach the borrowing limit in a month. The House is going to vote today on a short-term government funding bill coupled with language to hike the debt limit until 2022. Republicans are going to block it. If you still think Republican senators are going to cave, we can't help you. Republicans from Mitt Romney to Shelley Moore Caputo to Susan Collins have made very clear they're in lockstep with Mitch McConnell in blocking a debt limit hike. So what's plan B? Glad you asked, because we did too. No one has an answer. They asked Pelosi on Monday if the Senate Republicans would block this, what would they do? And Pelosi's response is, well, let's hope they don't. When Punchbowl News noted Republicans had repeatedly said they're going to reject it, she says again, well, let's hope they don't. They're going to block it. The Democrats have a fallback. They can add a debt limit increase to the reconciliation package by amending the budget resolution. It would be time consuming, but the clock is ticking. They got to do it soon. The speaker doesn't want them to do it that way. Pelosi said we put our path in the continuing resolution. In other words, she's not going to rule it out, but she's not yet conceding that it's likely. So then there's Joe Biden. At the moment, this is Punchbowl again, there's no clear path for Congress to pass the reconciliation package anytime soon. Pelosi held a meeting with committee chairs and leaders in the Capitol Monday night, said decisions need to be made on the overall direction of the package, meaning taxes, Medicare, Medicaid, and more in the next 48 hours. It seems exceedingly unlikely these decisions will be made in the next 2 days. Even if they were to happen, the fastest the reconciliation package can come to the floor would be the end of next week. But even that's unlikely because of the chasm between the moderates and progressives. Pelosi insisted the differences between the House and Senate Democrats aren't as wide as many rank-and-file lawmakers believe. But she also had a carefully worded warning to the progressives. Be prepared to be disappointed by the Senate. Her words, our legislation is being reviewed by the House and Senate budget committees for possible bird violation challenges in order to narrow our exposure in a bird bath. The House and Senate are already in agreement on most of the bills. Not a lot of confidence there. She made a concession to moderates, Nancy Pelosi did. She promised the House wouldn't vote on a version of the reconciliation package that's more expensive than the Senate counterpart. That's been a big fear. The President and Senate Democrats sent us a budget resolution with a cap of $3.5 trillion. We've promised members we would not have House members vote for a bill with a higher top line that would be passed by the Senate. Hopefully, that will be at the $3.5 trillion number. We must be prepared for adjustments according to the Byrd rule and an agreed upon number. Now, all of this may sound like gobbledygook for you, but let me explain this to you in just raw political terms. The Democrats can't figure out among themselves what they want in the overall package. They can't figure out how to restrain the spending to satisfy Joe Manchin, and they can't figure out how to raise the debt limit without Republican votes because they don't want to own it completely. They're afraid it's going to be a political issue, and Mitch McConnell knows all of this. There's a lot of discussion about Republicans ousting Mitch McConnell, trying to get rid of Mitch McConnell. Donald Trump thinks the era of Mitch McConnell must come to an end. I used to. But he's not going anywhere, at least not right now. Not with Donald Trump pushing him out. And here is the thing you got to understand. McConnell knows how this game is played, and right now you want him in this position because he's got a united Republican front saying they're not going to raise the debt limit. If the Democrats can't do it in the reconciliation package, and this is a big deal here, if the Democrats cannot raise the debt ceiling in the reconciliation package, McConnell can force concessions. He's not going to do an all or nothing approach. McConnell is not going to say, yes, we will gladly raise the debt ceiling with no strings attached. He's not going to do that. And remember, if the Democrats don't pass the debt ceiling increase in reconciliation, they're not going to be able to pass it without Republican help. Republicans aren't going to give them what they want. The Republicans are standing for it's one of the few times the Republicans are willing to fight. And in part of the reason the Republicans are willing to fight is they know the Democrats are really divided right now. See, I've been telling you guys for a while, and it always falls on deaf ears, but I've been telling y'all for a while that the Democrats are on the verge of a major crack up. And the media has always been obsessed with the Republican infighting. Like right now, so John Eastman, Donald Trump's lawyer, wrote a memo showing how he could hang on to power and essentially reject the Electoral College. You do not have to know much about the American Constitution to understand that he was full of crap, but he represented Donald Trump. He had to come up with something. He was a lawyer. He was doing his best to try to thread a needle that does not work. The dog does not hunt, as some might say. Mike Lee, the foremost expert on the Constitution in the United States Senate, laughed Eastman's memo out of the Senate, said there's no way, this is impossible. Mike Pence's lawyers, the Senate parliamentarian, former Vice President Dan Quayle, all said there's no way this happens. It was rejected. The media wants you to focus on Eastman's memo and the supposed coup that Donald Trump was trying to mount because they never, ever, 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 ever want to focus on Democrat divisions. The Democrats are actually the ones on the verge of a crack up at this moment. The Democrats are divided between the progressives and the moderates. The Democrats cannot get the Democrats' agenda passed. They cannot get their president's agenda passed through Congress. They cannot do it with themselves, even though the filibuster is not an obstacle. They can't do it because they are divided increasingly between the progressives and the moderates. And the progressives feel like they are on the rise. The progressives feel like it is their party now, and the progressives intend to make the moderates bend the knee. The moderates know they cannot bend the knee to the progressives in the Democratic Party because if they do, they're toast. They're gone. In fact, the moderates actually have truth on their side that if the Democratic Party goes further to the left, they're going to lose more and more people. They're starting to lose Hispanic voters. They're starting to lose young black men. They're starting to even lose college-educated people again. There's been a 12-point swing in the polling average of college-educated people moving back to the GOP in response to the Democrats' growing progressivism. So for the progressives to hold up the entire budgetary process and to hold up the spending package and to hold up the bipartisan infrastructure bill in order to get even more spending and more government expansion, that's not going to work for the public. You can't expect the Republicans to help you when you're saying your spending plan is going to fundamentally transform American society. On top of that, you can't expect the moderate House Democrats to sleep well at night thinking they're helping you fundamentally transform America when most Americans do not want America fundamentally transformed. The math does not add up. And the fighting is about to get really ugly on the Democratic side without any Republicans participating.